Today on Sports with the Real McCoy, I am joined by Chicago Bears beat writer Zack Pearson from 24/7 Sports. We dove into the combine which Zack attended and our predictions for what the Chicago Bears would do in free agency and the NFL draft. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy Zack and I's conversation.
What are some guys that impressed you at the combine while you were there? Give me a couple of names.
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with Will Anderson and how he kind of handled the media sessions and how he answered all the questions pretty much in depth and went to detail. Tyree Wilson was pretty impressive at his media session. In terms of on the field, I really liked what Josh Downs did. The Northwestern kid, I totally gonna butcher his name, forgot his name.
Double A.
Yeah, double A defensive lineman. I think he had a big camp or a big combine. Excuse me, but yeah, just overall, the depth of the defensive line and how many good edge rushers there are. Lucas Van Ness was impressive. The kid from Pitt, Calijay Cansey,
Yep.
he was impressive. Yeah, I mean, wide receivers, like I said, Josh Downs. I like Jalen Hyatt. I think the quarterbacks, wasn't really high on Will Levis going in. Thought he had a good combine, and then Anthony Richardson obviously stole the show with all of his metrics and that, and CJ Stroud, which is great news for the Chicago Bears because they right now don't need a quarterback. So yeah, I think just more of the depth of the defensive line and tight end positions were just a lot better than I thought they would be.
Yeah, I find it interesting in the combine. Of course, all of the fans and the media get caught up on the 40 times and the verts and what people do on the field. What I think a lot of people fail to realize is that 80% of the combine is what goes on behind the scenes.
Yep.
You guys in the media, how you have your media interviews, which fans get to see, but all those closed door meetings, we don't get to see what goes on between general managers and coaches and players. So I think it's always interesting to see, you get those guys every year that kind of get drafted based off of their combine and who maybe weren't on people's radar, and all of a sudden they run a blazing 40 time and they jump 40 inches, and now all of a sudden they're a second round pick. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, the combine is it's interesting because it goes that way and it can go the other way too. There's been guys who are just outstanding at the combine, just can't do it the next level. But you're right. I mean, the behind the scenes stuff is just it's the bread and butter of the combine. I say actually watching those drills and being in the stadium. I didn't even go into the drills this year. I watched them on TV from my room pretty much. And then when I got back home, I watched them. Watching the drills in person in the stadium it's kind of boring, honestly. The stuff, the player interviews is a lot better. Seeing the NFL personnel, the players, teams, scouts, media members, the who's who of the NFL is there. They're all in one spot. That's the fun stuff as the day goes, closes down, who's out to dinner where, who's at this bar, who's at this restaurant, where's everyone hanging out at, how do you network? That's the coolest stuff about the combine in my eyes.
Yeah, I would say a couple players for me on field wise that kind of impressed. Blake Freeland from BYU, I think, a guy who had a pretty tough Senior Bowl, kind of got with had tough one-on-ones and stuff like that, but a guy who runs a 4.98, jumps 37 inches. And, I think for the Bears, Poles has shown his desire to have athletic offensive linemen. And I think a guy like Freeland, a lot like Braxton Jones, a guy who might be a little bit undersized in terms of power, but provides that athletic frame that you hope that they can kind of mold into a, NFL strength-wise offensive lineman. So he was someone that definitely caught my eye. Maybe the Bears decide to draft offensive tackle high, but maybe if they're looking to just add better depth, he could be a guy late second round, early third round, maybe that they keep an eye on.
Yeah, the thing with the offensive line is if the Bears do trade back, which is 99%, they're going to trade. It's pretty clear now.
Yeah.
If they find themselves outside the top 10 or pick up an extra second round pick, that's an ideal scenario where you can look at an offensive tackle, like you mentioned, like Freeland, or, you can look at someone like Peter Skoransky out of Northwestern. I don't know if he'll be a tackle at the next level or guard. Guys like that, you probably wouldn't take in the top 5, top 10. In Freeland's case, probably wouldn't take him in the top 20, 25, 30, depending on what his stock is now. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that with the Bears scheme as well. Like, what kind of offensive tackles are they looking for? Like, is Paris Johnson out of Ohio State someone that would catch their eyes? Are they looking for run blockers? Are they looking for pass protectors? We saw last year, like, they want to get out to the outside zone run, but a lot of times they did play action with Justin Fields. Like, do you need a mobile tackle? Yeah, I did see the Freeland stuff. I did see I think it was the Florida kid. Cyrus Torrance. I thought he
Yeah.
had a good combine. And then it's unfortunate that, the USC kid, Andrew Voorhees.
Yeah, I just saw that news. That's really
crazy. Yeah, that's like kind of the downside of the combine. It's like that stuff happens and it's just unfortunate.
And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, an offensive guard from USC ended up tearing his ACL at the combine, and he's now, going to have to go through surgery and all that. So unfortunately for him, a guy who was, a pretty projected, probably second, third round pick, now, unfortunately, you probably will see his draft stock fall. I want to get into something, I feel like that's a bit more of a fun topic. Who are a couple of players that you would deem luxury picks for the Bears? They may not need it. It may not be a position of need, but just a guy who you were like, man, I would really want him on the Chicago Bears.
Right away, I want to go to like defensive back. And honestly, like Christian Gonzalez, excuse me, the Oregon product. I think he played somewhere else before that. He had a really good combine. Like his measurables are really good. His performance is pretty damn good as well. He'd probably be like a luxury pick for me. Devin Witherspoon out of a UNI or U of I. I think he's going to be one of the best defensive backs, in this class. And he's in Illinois has produced some good defensive backs for the past couple of years. I'd say in terms of a luxury pick, it would be like one of those two defensive backs. I love Josh Downs, a wide receiver. I'm a little biased because I like North Carolina, but I think that'd be a good luxury pick, a quote unquote luxury pick in the second round as well. But yeah, I mean, I just look at this Bears roster. It's kind of hard, like really outside of quarterback and defensive back, they're kind of like set. Like that's the two positions are set. They have a lot of needs in this draft. I guess you could argue defensive back, they could use another starter, maybe another safety. Maryland's Deontay Banks was a good prospect at the combine. He's another defensive back. Because I mean, they just have so many needs. Like, you could draft offensive line, defensive line, double up, linebacker, running back, tight end, all these positions. And I don't think it'd be a luxury. I think it'd be a big need. But yeah, I'd kind of go towards that defensive back. It wouldn't shock me either. I think a lot of people would be surprised. It would not shock if the Bears went defensive back in the second round at all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think defensive back is at least that cornerback depth. I mean, right now, I'm assuming they're going to stick with Eddie Jackson for another year or two. Obviously, Juan Brisker. So I think they're probably set on safety. But I do agree that cornerback, potentially another outside corner and also just solid depth there is needed. To me, my guys, I have two guys who are kind of like my guys who I just would love on the team, both from Alabama, actually. I have no ties to Alabama or anything, but Jahmyr Gibbs is one of them. Yep. I know running back isn't, a high coveted position anymore, but that guy, man, when I watch him, I get CJ2K, I get Alvin Kamara, the change of direction, the acceleration, it's bonkers. And, of course, most people have Bijan as their number one running back. And I'm not saying that Gibbs is number one over Bijan, but to me, just watching Jahmyr Gibbs, if his 4.36 speed with Justin's 4.4 speed, I mean, that would just be kind of ridiculous in a backfield together.
Well, and that's kind of the good point about running backs is like, you said they're not a luxury. You can find them in, second, third, fourth round, fifth. I mean, the Bears found David Montgomery as a starter on day 2 or day 3. They did with Jordan Howard a couple of years ago, potentially with Khalil Herbert now. So yeah, I mean, Gibbs it would be a good luxury pick. Robinson out of Texas would be a good luxury pick. There's a lot of good running backs in this class that aren't going to go in the first round that could be beneficial for the Bears, especially if they don't bring back David Montgomery.
Yeah, and I think that's why I kind of consider Gibbs a luxury pick because, yes, if they don't bring back Montgomery, running back is going to be not the biggest immediate need, but it is going to be a need. But, Gibbs most likely going to be either a late first round, very early second round pick. So for the Bears to use one of those highly coveted picks on a running back would probably, some people would be a bit hesitant about that, which I agree with. I think that's a very valid argument. But Gibbs to me is just, I think he's going to be a star at the NFL. My other guy too is Brian Branch,
Yep.
from the defensive back. I know he didn't combine wise. He honestly didn't test out. He wasn't one of those freak combine guys, but his tape is out of this world. And from all of the reports that come out, him and Will Anderson are the two alphas on that defense. We've seen his ability to go and make hits like Devon Witherspoon. Probably the two most physical defensive backs in this class. So Brian Branch should be the other one. He's going to be a first round guy. So I don't see Poles targeting him, but I think whatever team gets Brian Branch is going to be getting one hell of a football player.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing too. It's like, this defensive back class is so deep too. Like,
yeah.
And the tight end class is deep. The defensive line class is deep. And I agree. I think Branch will probably be a late first rounder, but if he did fall in the second round, like it could it's a slim possibility. It could happen. That's like the beauty of the draft is like the deeper the positions are, the more talent you're going to find in that second round. The Bears found 2 starters last year in the second round with Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. They found Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson the second round a couple years ago. So it's very possible a lot of these guys, and when I say slide, like it's not even a negative because I don't think a lot of teams would be saying that Brian Branch is not a good player. It's just they might have a need at tight end and they take Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame and that moves Branch 1 spot or 2 spots or 3 spots. A lot of it's need too, which is that's the beauty of the NFL draft.
I agree. That is always, I think, such a huge thing that GMs and coaches have to debate is, do you take the position of need or do you take the guy that you have the highest on your board? And that is always a tough decision because at the end of the day, you just want to get good football players because it doesn't matter if you get a guy at a position of need. If he doesn't end up being good, he's not worth anything. So yeah, that is always, I think that's why GMs always talk about sticking to their board and getting the guy that they have highest up there, because you might miss out on a Brian Branch, for example, and he turns to be out to be an all-pro.
Yeah.
And you're stuck with a guy that you took because you had that need, but he turns out to be just a guy, and now you're trying to replace him. So it's a tough thing that GM's gotta juggle. And go ahead.
It is. I agree. I was gonna say it's a tough job, and I'm glad I don't have to make any of those decisions.
Yeah. What was, a lot of people saw the Jalen Carter news over the combine. First, I want to ask you what kind of the vibe was with you being there. I'm sure there was a lot of chatter, a lot of things going back and forth. And I know it's probably too early to answer this question on if his draft stock is going to be hurt by this, because the reports got to come out and the police got to do their due diligence. But just take me through your thought process and your opinion on that whole situation.
Yeah, so it was interesting. It was a lot of people were lined up for Will Anderson, and then he talked. A bunch of other guys talked. The Jalen Carter group, the group before Jalen Carter, because they do it in like increments. The group before Jalen Carter was supposed to start, and before they started, we're all in one big conference, just giant room at the convention center. And pretty much everyone just on their phone, like, whoa, what the heck is this? While interviews are going on. The group before Carter did not start on time. So we're all kind of like, what's going on? He's got like a big group at his podium of media, the one he's supposed to be at. And actually Brian Breesy was at that podium before him. And then again, 20 minutes later, everyone's phones were going off about the arrest warrants and all this stuff. And we were just kind of just wait and see. And it was just a weird time. It's never been a part of anything like that, the combine. Just kind of standing there waiting, no answers. Is this guy going to talk? What's going on? Is he still here? He didn't talk. He went back to Georgia. The NFL called it injury related, which is okay, yeah, liars. We all saw our phones here. Everyone's here seeing our phones. It was definitely different. It was interesting. Like you said, I do think we have to wait, see, because it's misdemeanors. It's 2 misdemeanors. What's going to happen with the police? What's going to happen with him? I don't think his stock's going to fall. It's the NFL. I think team's going to take a chance on it. He's got he's one of the best players. A lot of people have him as number 1 player in the draft overall. So yeah, I don't think his draft stock will fall much. Maybe outside the top 10, but he's still going to be a heck of a player that's going to be drafted.
Right. What Ryan Poles has kind of made it clear, and again, he's only second year, so we can't totally get a feel for Poles yet. But he seems to have made it clear that he covets high character guys.
Yep.
And of course, this is a ding on Jalen Carter's character record. what do you think? Let's say the Bears just hypothetically trade to in between 7 and 10. They kind of make the big trade back. If Jalen Carter slides because of this issue, do you think Ryan Poles takes a chance on him at, let's say, 8, just to throw out a number, because he's just too good of a player to pass up on?
Yes, it would not surprise me at all if they took him. It's hard because, like you mentioned, like the culture, like the character, the culture, like him and Matty Rafus have mentioned culture numerous times over the past year. Mm-hmm. And you look at Byron Pringle, he had that little incident with the donuts in the car, and Matthew Adams had the gun incident. But those guys that was after the Bears signed them. So I think if you're Ryan Poles, you have to, when you met with Jalen Carter already, you're going to meet with him again eventually. You have to ask the question, man. I would spend a lot of time talking about his character. Tell me the truth. Do not lie. Do not lie like you lied to the cops, reportedly, allegedly, that he was not there, that he was close, and he was a mile away, whatever the whole saga was. I would try to learn as much as you can about the person, Jalen Carter, first. If you're comfortable with that, take him, because I think someone else is going to take him if you don't. Like, I don't think he's going to fall out of that top 10. Yeah, I mean, he becomes an option if the Bears do trade back. I still think, though, he's going to go, top 3 or 4, unless something comes out again and more stuff. But I just think, we have to kind of wait and see. But it's an interesting situation for the Bears, because they've been linked to him, man, since October in terms of the draft. So it'll be interesting to kind of follow here as the weeks go by.
And I saw on your Twitter that you reposted this, and the big news coming out today from Peter King of NBC Sports, that Poles says that he has already had offers for a 24 and a 25 first-round pick from teams, kind of in that middle to early middle first round. What would you say is your kind of dream trade scenario? Are you someone that rather have them stay in the top 3 and make sure they get a guy like Will Anderson, or would you rather move back to 9 with Carolina and get the bevy of draft picks?
I would prefer top 4, because I think if you trade with Houston or Indianapolis, you're going to get a top 4 pick this year. You're going to get the first rounder next year. You could get a second rounder this year again. You could get another pick in 2025, as the article mentioned. But I think the interesting aspect is here, okay, you're in the top 4. You're going to have a chance at Carter or Will Anderson, because I think Arizona's a key team to watch too. No one's talked about them trading back. If the first 2 picks are quarterbacks, let's say Indianapolis was up to 1. They take a quarterback. Houston takes a quarterback. Someone trades at 3, they take a quarterback. You're going to have a choice of Carter, Anderson, Tyree Wilson, whoever you want right there. The first position player, non-quarterback off the board. The thing to note, though, is Indianapolis or Houston are probably going to start a rookie quarterback next season, or a veteran, and it's not going to go well. They're very likely going to have a top 10 pick. They're likely going to have a top 5 pick in 2024. So you can position yourself into having an elite defensive player, 2 first-round picks next year, probably a top 20, maybe top 15, and then at least a top 5, top 10. And you can use that. I mean, if Houston or Indianapolis, are the worst team in the league and they have number 1, you could trade back again and just pick up just a crazy haul, because Caleb Williams and Drake May look like they're far better than any of these prospects coming out this year. So, yeah, the Bears are in a good spot. Like, if Ryan Poles plays this perfectly, I would say it's Indianapolis or Houston. It's getting a first rounder this year, let's say a second rounder this year, a first rounder next year that could turn into a top 3, 5, top 10 pick, and land Will Anderson or Jalen Carter or whoever you have high on your board. That's the money scenario if I'm Ryan Poles.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, a team like Carolina, depending on what happens with that quarterback position, whether they try to go veteran route or it seems like they try to go the rookie route, that's a team that has potential to be really good on the quarterback. And I think that is something that Poles has taken into consideration, like you mentioned. If you trade with the Panthers and whoever they take at 1 ends up being really good, well, all of a sudden that pick from the Panthers is like in the 20s, maybe.
Yeah.
So I still think, I agree that Indianapolis, I mean, the dream situation for me would be able to get 2-12 from Houston. I don't know if they offer you 2-12. But yeah, Indy, they're desperate. We all know that on the quarterback carousel that they've been on. My only hesitancy with going to 4 now would be the chance that you're sitting at 4 and 2 quarterbacks and Will Anderson are gone and they don't feel comfortable taking Jalen Carter. Yeah. And now you're at 4 and you're like, oh, I don't know if I like Tyree Wilson enough to take him at 4. So that'd be my only hesitancy, which is why the Jalen Carter news, I think, maybe threw a bit of a wrinkle in their plans, because if you go to 4 and you're guaranteed Will Anderson or Jalen Carter and you're happy with either, then you're golden.
Yeah.
If they're not happy with Jalen Carter anymore because of this, you don't want to be stuck at 4 where you feel like you're reaching on a guy. But it's going to be, it's going to be interesting. We know Ryan Poles covets draft picks. He said that since day one, since he's been general manager. So maybe he views trading back and having 2 future firsts for the next couple of years is what he wants. But, it also, so much of this is going to be determined in free agency and who they decide to sign, because, a lot of people could argue they should trade back to 9 and draft the best offensive tackle in the class. Well, if they go out and sign Jawan Taylor or Caleb McGrary, they don't need an offensive tackle anymore. So there's, there's just, what's so crazy about it is there are so many scenarios.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's literally endless possibilities. You could try to do a double trade. You could try to do one massive trade. Maybe he just does a little trade with the Texans, goes to 2 and takes Will Anderson and calls it a day. So it's just, that's what makes it so exciting as Bears fans. And of course, as reporters, it's endless conversation. You can talk about anything.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point. We have to get to free agency first. Like, I don't know if free agency will dictate everything the Bears do. Like you said, if they draft a big tackle, right tackle, or they get a left tackle, move Braxton Jones, probably takes a tackle off the board if they trade back. They could double up. I don't know. Like you said, there's so many scenarios. Right. They could land a dominant 3 technique in the free agency period, double up there with Jalen Carter, or they could go, Tyree Wilson or Will Anderson, depending on where they're at. They could fall to outside the top 10 and take JSN out of Ohio State. There's so many scenarios. It's crazy. And it's all because they have the number 1 pick and the Houston Texans just totally blew it. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah. And my kind of philosophy, which I think where the Bears are at right now, the Bears have a bunch of needs. We all know that they're at the point where they just need to add the best talent they can add. And I think kind of where the reason I lean towards, I'd rather stay in that top 4, like we talked about, and almost guarantee one of those potential generational type players, is because, if you go back to the 9 range, just for example, I think the Bears took Leonard Floyd at 8 when that happened. Taking Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, the chances are the floor of those guys is they're going to be very solid players.
Yeah.
But you have a chance of getting a potential Nick Bosa, that caliber of a player. So I think in the Bears scenario, if I was Ryan Poles, I would rather have the 1 Nick Bosa versus having 3 additional picks who just turn out to be okay players. Because it's always easy to find. You can go out and sign any okay players or a guy to fill that role. You can't just go out and sign a generational, Micah Parsons, a Nick Bosa. Yep. And that's the debate he has to have internally.
And, I think the Bears have so many needs that they still need a blue chip. Like, they have probably 1 blue chip right now. I'd say Justin Fields, if he takes the next step. They have players that can be blue chip players are on their way. They need a dominant game record on defense. Like, their defensive line was so bad last year, worse than the NFL in sacks, worse than the NFL in pressures, second to last in, I think, rushing yards allowed. They were bad. They need a complete overhaul in that front 7. They probably need some more linebackers. So I agree. I think they need a dominant game record, and then get your, other role players, or even if you get another dominant player in free agency, you can build it. I do think they need to come away this draft with a legit blue chip prospect.
When do you think a trade happens? It seems like, in my opinion, it's going to be soon, but who knows?
Man, it's tough. I not, I want to say like late March, so not like the final week. I think the week before that, which would be what, like the 24th.
Like first week or so into free agency?
Yeah, first or second week of free agency. Yeah, I think just around then, maybe March Madness time, because I don't know, the NFL seems to have a knack for trades during the NCAA tournament. Like Devontae Adams was traded when Kentucky was losing to St. Peter's. I remember that vividly last year. Yeah, I think it's going to be probably like a March 24th, March, 20th, any in that range. It honestly wouldn't shock me anytime at all, to be honest. It just wouldn't.
I agree. It feels like it's at the point where, like you said, it could be tomorrow, or it could be a month from now, or it could be a couple weeks before the draft. I certainly don't think, I mean, I can't guarantee this. I don't think they're going to wait till draft day. They're going to get this cleared up before, there's way too many risks of waiting until draft day. So, I think you want to get, first off, the Bears have to do their due diligence and their homework and set up their board and decide what route they want to go. So they need time themselves to figure out I think months to go. And when you're in control of all of the cards, which Ryan Poles is, you want to be in control, not waiting an hour before the draft to try to make some blockbuster trade. So I agree. I think it's going to happen. I would say, sometime in March. Like I said, it could be tomorrow. It could be 3 weeks from now. Who knows? Do you think that if the Bears play their cards right this offseason in the draft, that they could be a playoff team next year?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think so. I think we always see it in the NFL. The parity. There's always a team that goes last to first or gets close. I mean, the Lions were on the fringe of the playoffs last year, so yeah, I think it's possible. Would I put money on it right now? Probably not. Just because I still think they have so many needs. I have to wait to see if they do in free agency in the draft. But if Ryan Poles has, he's going to have like a 50-50 draft. Like if he has like a really solid draft where he lands 3 or 4 difference makers and improvements, I think they can be a playoff team. Yeah.
What are some guys in free agency that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big one was Daron Payne, who's now tagged. So I think you look down at that 3-technique defensive line. You look at Javon Hargraves out of Philadelphia, where they let him walk. He's probably going to get a big payday. Vermont Jones out of Denver. It looks like he's going to be expensive, but the Bears don't have to worry about money right now. Those are the 2 guys at that position I'd look at. McGlinchey at tackle, McGarry, Juwan Taylor. Those are probably the 3 names right now that are kind of buzzing in terms of offensive linemen. I'd probably stay away from the wide receivers.
I agree.
I would not dabble. I think the Bears knew that when they traded for Chase Claypool. I don't know. There's a lot of this year it's odd because there's not a lot of huge superstar names. And typically the rule is the best players at the positions really don't hit free agency. That's why we saw Daron Payne get tagged. I'm actually more interested in the wide receiver group of the trade market. Like, where does DeAndre Hopkins go? Will there be another wide receiver available for trade? They're not going to go after Allen Robinson again. Just does not make sense for both sides. But yeah, I would say, looking at the biggest needs, I mean, Jones, Hargrave, for 3-technique, I think McGlinchey is probably the best option at right tackle for the Bears, or get Taylor. Those are probably the 4 or 5 guys I would really focus on. I'm trying to think. David Montgomery is probably an interesting name just because he's connected to the Bears. I saw Tony Pollard got tagged.
I saw that
tag, so he probably won't be available. Saquon Barkley is someone probably to watch too.
I was just about to bring him up. I was having a talk with a coworker today, and he said he's coming around to the idea of the Bears signing Saquon. And I told him, as much as I couldn't complain if the Bears paired Saquon Barkley with Justin Fields, I mean, it would be electric. I am still of the stance. We all know how good Saquon is. But I'm still of the stance that you don't pay running backs.
Yeah.
And especially a guy who, he had a phenomenal year, but a guy who has a lot of injury history.
Yeah.
But again, it's the idea, just thinking about having Saquon and Justin together is.
I mean, I'm with you. I'm on the stance of I don't I don't like giving out big contracts to running backs. I think if you get David Montgomery back for the right price, yes. I would not pay him a ton of money. I would, I didn't think they should pay Jordan Howard a ton of money, and they moved on from him. Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's like, I feel like you're either all in on Saquon or you're not. I don't know, man. I go back and forth on it. I think if they strike out on some big free agents early, I think they'll probably turn their focus to Saquon because they're going to have to spend the money somewhere. Like they have to spend the money. Yeah, I think Saquon is though probably the most interesting name out of a lot of people.
He's been being thrown around a lot, and a big reason, like people say, they have to hit the cap score. I think they have to spend like 85 million just to hit the minimum.
Yep.
But you bring up the tackles. I think that's what's going to be the most interesting one. I think it's almost written at this point they're going to sign one of them.
Yeah.
My question is, Poles has the offensive line background. He's got Ian Cunningham as well, who's got that offensive line background. Which one do they covet more? Do they covet Jawan Taylor, because he's only 25 and probably has the most upside out of the three of them? But you could argue that in terms of right now, who's the best, that he isn't. Yeah. Or do they covet a run blocking guy like McGrary, or maybe they just like McGlinchey because he fits that zone running scheme from San Francisco? I think it's good to have options, but that I'm going to be really curious to see. I'm guessing they sign one of those three, but which one, I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, and the thing to kind of note is Poles said it in his press conference at the Combine. Like, they're still looking for O-line. They're always looking to upgrade the O-line. And I think, find the right tackle fit is going to be important. If they bring in McGlinchey, boom, he slots in right tackle. To bring in someone else, a left tackle, do you move Braxton Jones over? I think Tevin Jenkins is probably going to stay at right guard, although I would not be shocked if they tried to experiment somewhere else with him again. It kind of seems like how his career is going.
Poor guy, bro.
I know. It's crazy. But I think they're going to sign a bunch of offensive linemen for competition or draft. I think Lucas Patrick will be back at center. I think I'll give him a fair shake there. Cody Whitehair is probably the interesting one to keep an eye on. They got to figure out the right tackle feels like the missing piece, and then they could start to get their line built. If they get the solid right tackle, you keep Braxton Jones on the left side, or you sign a solid left tackle, you move Braxton Jones to the right side. I think that's your spot. Or go get two tackles. Go get a left tackle and a right tackle. Say, Braxton, if you want to be a starter, go win this job. Show you played well last year. Show us what you got. So.
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like Braxton did enough to warrant the chance to become the starter. We all know he's got to put on weight and he's got to put on strength. Yeah. But again, they go down to 9 and they fall in love with Paris Johnson or someone, and Braxton Jones becomes your 6th offensive lineman kind of swing tackle, which it's tough. It's a business. You feel bad for the guy. But if Ryan Poles, I certainly know Ryan Poles is not scared to upgrade wherever he feels like he needs to upgrade. And if he feels like there is a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle in this draft, maybe he takes them. So again, the options are endless, which is what makes this so exciting, which is why Ryan Poles has the key to the entire NFL offseason. I kind of imagine, my guess is they sign two. My guess is they do 2 really big signings. Like, let's say a Draymond Jones and a Jawan Taylor. They do 2 guys who get like the over $15 million a year contract.
Yeah.
And then it's probably, 5 or 6 other guys who are in that 10 to 12 million, Bobby Okereke at linebacker. Maybe they do get rid of Whitehair and they put in Ben Powers or another guard to fill that spot. So, I think Poles has said he doesn't like, he likes finding the right price. He doesn't just want to throw out money to guys. In this case, they kind of do a little bit. They have to throw out money to guys.
Yep.
But I mean, they need arguably 3 new offensive line starters and 3 new defensive line starters.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I think if you maybe get 2 of those each in free agency, you get a guard and a tackle, and you get a T-tech and an edge, and then you get another one of each in the draft, then you have 6 solid people, 6 upgrades on your interiors, which hopefully should make the rest of the entire team operate smoother.
Yeah, and you got to build in the trenches. Like, you have to fix the offensive line. You have to fix the defensive line. That's, to me, those are the biggest keys. That's where you start. Ryan Poles has said it in the past. It's where he wants to build. Spend the money there, draft there as well, and start to kind of build that up here in 2023.
Yeah. And when you look at teams like the Eagles, having a good O-line and D-line makes everything else seem a little bit better than it might actually be. It might make your secondary to get more turnovers because there's more pressure, and your quarterback gets more time, your receivers have more time to get open. It just the football is one of the trenches. And whether people want to admit it or not, it's one of the trenches. And I think I'm confident that Ryan Poles understands that, and they have the resources to go and better both sides of the ball. And I hope that they put the proper resources into those. Is there anything else you want to add, Zach? Those are all the questions I had for you today.
Oh man, no, that was good stuff, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, everyone who doesn't know, Zack Pearson here writes for 24/7 Sports. He's a Bears reporter, also a big UNC Tar Heels fan, as you mentioned. Thank you so much for joining me today, Zach. I hope that we can do this again. Hopefully, when news breaks, we can maybe chat up again about finally, when it's not all speculation, when it's actually news that happens and it's not just rumors, we can talk about that and our takes on that.
Yeah, anytime you want, man. Just let me know. I'll be down as long as my schedule allows it.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Take it easy.